Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. In today's video, I am super excited to share with you guys a very in-depth review of the Dior Backstage Glow Face Palette. So this video has been a long time coming. I've been eyeing this palette for many years now. I feel like it's been very popular since its release. A lot of people still cite this as their all-time favorite palette for highlight. And so recently in the Sephora VIB sale, I decided to finally pick this up, and I've been really enjoying it since then. Especially this highlight over here is just perfect for my skin tone, goes with pretty much every look. But for today's video, I really wanted to focus on an in-depth review, kind of testing this product out in many different ways to see how can I really leverage all four of these shades, because of course, as lovely as this one is, this is a very pricey palette. And I mean, I'm not opposed to paying like $45 for a single highlight, but you know, the whole point of buying this is that you get four shades. And so I'm going to be trying this out as eyeshadow, as a full face palette. So I'm going to be using this as a blush and this as a bronzer. So I'm going to really test it out in every way. And so if any of you are like me and have been wondering, can you actually use all of these shades? Hopefully this will help you decide, especially if you have a similar skin tone to myself. As a side note, you might notice that my voice is a little bit funky today. I am still recovering from a cold, so apologies in advance if it's a little bit harder to understand me. But without further ado, let's get into this palette. So let me first just give you guys a close-up of the packaging. So there's no mirror with this. The Backstage line is designed for makeup artists, or at least inspired by their needs, and so you can very clearly see all of the shades. The formulation itself is a baked gelée, and so you have that luxe experience with minimum fallout or kick up in the pan, but you do need to use a slightly stiffer brush in order to pick these up, like a natural hair brush. I do really love the Dior embossment as well, very luxe. And then on the other side, you can see the shade names. So these first two are described as strobe finishes. So we have white and gold. You can see the gold really melts into my skin tone and looks very natural. And then the second two are actually described on the back as blush. So we have pink and we have bronze. And you can see in swatch, they actually look very similar to eyeshadow. So I'm hoping this will really double up as a nice eyeshadow palette. These are all meant to be very luminous highlights though. So it's gonna be interesting to see if we get enough pigmentation. So to start out, I'm going to just use this as a highlight palette to show you guys what that looks like. So I'm actually going to go in with my Artist Small Brush from Wayne Goss. This is a very light brush, so it's not going to pick up that much product. And we're going to start just with the Strobe White shade, and I'm going to put a little bit of this just on the center of my cheek there, so hopefully you guys can see. So in my experience, the Strobe White shade is a little bit light for my skin tone. Straight on, you might be able to see there is a little bit of kind of a white cast effect. So I can still make it work, but it is a little bit light. And I have a light medium skin tone for reference. Today, I'm wearing the ABH Luminous Foundation in 220N. As always, all the products on my face will be linked below. So now let's go into the gold shade, and I'm going to do kind of a similar thing over here, just put it on this cheek. And I think you can see that this side definitely looks a little bit more natural on my skin in comparison to this side. So over here, there really isn't much cast at all. Straight on, you can maybe see a tiny bit of gold, but overall, it looks pretty natural. The side's a little bit frosty in comparison. Cleaning that off, let's go into the pink now, and I'm going to put this kind of further up my cheek. So there you can see it used as a highlight. So brushed on like this, there is a bit of pink cast that you get, so you do get a little bit of that blush effect. But as you can see, it still is quite bright, so you could definitely use this as a highlight or blush topper as well. And then again, cleaning that off, let's take some of the bronze and just sweep that on the back of this cheek. So you can see a little bit of that brown hue over there. Does add a bit of bronziness. So this is the one shade in this palette I would say on my skin tone doesn't really work very well as a highlight. I mean, still passable, but definitely leaves a bit of a brown cast that I wouldn't normally put on the high points of my face. So now let's try building this up to see if we can use this more as a face palette. So I'm going to first go in with my Refer number 35 brush into the bronze shade and kind of sweep this where I would normally put some bronzer, contour, see if it works for this purpose. As you can see, it's definitely very glowy, so if you don't like a glowy bronze, this is not going to be good for you, but okay, I think it's adding a little bit of contour, sort of working. All right, so here we have the bronze on this side and nothing on this side. I mean, we have a little bit of bronze there, but not that much. Let me see actually if I can sweep it along my hairline. I'm going to use this Refer number 18 brush, which is a little bit fluffier. And let's see how it looks over here. All right. Not terrible. I mean, it's a little bit, it's interesting because I feel like it's a little bit cool toned as a bronzer, but it's also like very shiny. So, but not horrible. I think it actually looks decent. So this side has that bronze highlight. This side doesn't. I mean, I will say you do use a decent amount of product this way, so it's maybe not the most cost-effective way to use this palette, but I'm surprised it's actually looking not bad. I would have thought using kind of highlighter all over my face would make me look really ridiculous at this point, but not bad. I think especially if I had a contour on already to kind of provide some more pigmentation, this would just, on top of it, give it a really nice kind of shimmer finish, or not quite shimmer. I think one thing I like about this palette, as you can maybe see, is there's not really that sense of like glitter or like really prominent shimmery particles. Instead, it's just giving everything a nice glow. So even though my forehead is an area I would normally not really want to put that much highlighter, I think it actually kind of works as sort of a bronze topper. Like, I don't think I would use this just by itself in the future because I'm having to kind of build it up to get the pigmentation, but maybe just using this to top off an existing bronzer would be the way to go. Okay, and let's just finish off this side as well, adding a little bit more. Yeah, I don't think it actually looks bad as a bronzer. It's surprisingly sort of working as that purpose. Wow, okay, that's nice, because definitely this bronze shade was the one I was least certain about in terms of whether I could make it work, but it's actually looking pretty good. Now, definitely for the chin area, I think it would be good to use something that's not so shimmery, but for today, I'm just going to use whatever is left over on my brush. All right, so now let's see if we can use this pink one as blush. I have my Refer number 37 brush for this, and let's see if we can pick something up. Okay, I picked up a light amount, and let's sweep it over here. Ooh, okay. This one is very, very glowy as a blush, as you can see here. So you do get some of that pink, but it reminds me a lot of the Charlotte Tilbury blush lights, the Pinkgasm one that I have. You can use it as a blush, but it's really more of a blush topper because it's just so shimmery compared to how much pigmentation you get, and it's definitely a similar vibe with this. You can see that there's some pink there, but it almost has kind of a frostiness to it. As a side note, sadly, I feel like the Dior embossment is really wearing off as I'm using this as a cheek palette because I'm using a lot more than I would normally for highlight. But that's okay, we're experimenting today. And I pretty much never hit pan with things anyways, but just wanted to comment about that in case you are buying this as a face palette. You'll probably use it up quite quickly. All right, so there we go. Here is the blush on both sides. Again, I don't really know that I would normally use this as blush. I think I would normally use this as blush topper. I think this would actually look really good on top of this Dior blush because this has a similar sort of cool toned pink element. Let me actually give you guys a quick swatch here. So I think in the future, the way I would use this pink highlight is to first put down this pink blush to give it some pigmentation and then go on top with this pink highlight. Because even though in swatch this pink highlight has a lot of pigmentation, it's just so luminous and in a very cool toned way that you end up getting this very frosty effect on the cheeks when you put it all over. So I think normally I wouldn't really go for that. And actually, let's go ahead and try that out a bit. So I know this is the reverse order, but I do feel like I need a bit more pigmentation. So with that same brush, I'm just going to take a little bit of this and put it on top and see if we can just add some more color to the face. Okay, I think that's working. It's like not actually dulling the shine down that much. You still have that luminosity, but just a little bit more actual pigmentation. And again, I think if I did this in the other order, it would be even better. All right, there we go. Very, very pink cheeks. Very cool toned pink. All right, so now back to these two. So there's already a lot of shine on my cheeks, but I'm gonna add just a little bit more. So on this side, I'm gonna go in with the gold highlight. You guys can see any difference there. It's highlight on highlight on highlight. I'm also going to take this on my forehead, since why not? Everything is so shimmery anyway. And just put this all over the center of my forehead. So that way I just look like I have a very, very luminous foundation. But it actually works. I think this shade again just blends in really nicely with my skin tone. Cleaning off that brush a bit, I'm going into this shade on this side. And I think that you can see a lot more. Whew, yeah, that's definitely really, really white. So here is the white side, here is the golden side. I mean, both of them are pretty bright. I did also put some of the white highlight here, I guess. And then with a tiny bit of that as well, I'm gonna actually bring that down my nose so you can see a little bit more of the effect the white highlight gives. Alrighty, there we go. So full face of highlighter, really, really beaming cheeks. Now let's go into this palette as an eyeshadow palette. So I brought you guys closer for this portion. I'm going in first with my worker brush from Sonia G into this brown shade. And I'm going to use this as a crease shade. So I'm just going to pack this in the outer corner and start sweeping it inwards. This is definitely a bit more shimmery than I would typically go with for a transition shade, but hopefully it still works. I mean, my whole face is definitely very shiny today. Alrighty, so here we have the brown as a transition shade. I'm going to go in now actually with my finger into the pink shade and put that all over the center of the lid. Gives that really cute kind of frosty pink effect. Very nice. And then with my Chikuhodo GSN9 brush, I'm taking some of the gold and just putting that in the inner thirds. And then with my mini booster, a little bit of the white just in the inner corner. You can see just how bright that white is. Take a little bit of that as well on the brow bone area. And I'm going to clean things up with my classic crease from Sonia G. Alrighty, there we go. So that's a very pretty kind of subtle, nice, glowy eyeshadow look. On the lower lash line, I'm going to first take some of the bronzy shade and put it in the outer corners. Then some of the pink just for the center, and then again some gold in the inner corners. So there we have the completed eyeshadow look, and I mean, it goes very well with our cheek look as well. So I'm going to put on some eyeliner and then be back with my overall thoughts about this palette. So here we have the final look. What do you guys think? So before we get into final impressions, I did want to just provide you guys a few comparison swatches. So first off, I have Golden Nectar from Pat McGrath. This is one of my overall favorite highlight formulas. So I wanted to show you guys how that looks next to this Dior formula. So I would say in swatch, the Dior actually comes across a little bit brighter, but I think the formulation's just very different in terms of the Dior being a baked formula. So you can pick up a much smaller amount in comparison to the Pat McGrath. But as you can see today, you can also really build up the Dior. I also wanted to provide some comparisons with Hourglass. So we have this bronzer over here that's quite glowy. And then we have this highlight. And formulation-wise, I would say that the highlighter looks fairly similar to the Dior. Again, the Dior has a little bit more sparkle to it. In terms of the bronzer, you can see that there's a huge difference. This bronzer over here is a lot more shimmery in comparison to this one, even though this one's a relatively glowy bronzer. So overall, I would say in terms of today's look, I am glad that there is some versatility to this palette. So if you wanted to use it all over the face, you definitely can. Now, do I actually think I'm going to do this sort of really glowy look again? To be honest, I think realistically, I'm mostly probably going to go for this palette in order to use this shade, and then maybe occasionally this shade as a blush topper. But in terms of the other two shades, I do just think this one is a little bit frosty for me. Maybe like in the dead of winter, I could use it. I mean, I like it for inner corner highlight. That's probably the one place where that frostiness really pays off. But elsewhere on the face, I think it's just a little bit too bright. And then for this shade, I could see using this kind of to turn a matte bronzer into more of a glowy bronzer. I am quite impressed how it looks on my forehead. I was really expecting it to not be flattering at all, but it actually looks decent. That said, I think if you are buying this primarily as a highlight palette and you have a similar complexion to me, it might actually be better to pick this up in one of the other color stories, because I think those are a little bit more similar to this shade over here, so you can get a bunch of shades that all kind of work as highlights. I think honestly for myself, I probably would have gotten more use out of that palette rather than this palette. But if you are interested in having a lot of range / pairing these with other face products, then I do think this is a decent palette if you want to use it in this way. On the whole though, this formula is really lovely, definitely one of my favorite highlight formulas, even though I've only had this for a few weeks. It's just kind of jumped up there along with some of my other favorites. I really love how the Baked Gelée formula just gives a really luxe experience, because unlike with other highlights, you're not going to pick up too much product. You can really slowly build it up. You don't have any fallout or kick up in the pan. So from that standpoint, I would definitely recommend this formulation. I wish they would sell these in individuals instead of as a palette, but as a palette, it's still a pretty good purchase. So that's it for today's video. I would love to hear in the comments what you guys think about these Dior Backstage palettes. If you have any of them, please let me know, or if you are considering them, I would love to hear what your thought process is. Hopefully this video was helpful for exploring different possible use cases for this palette. If you guys like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you all so much for joining me today, and I'll catch you next time. Bye!